former accountant turned podcaster and founder of my own subscription box company.
And I'm Wheezy, former tech exec turned podcaster and comedy writer. We're the hosts of the Horrible Decisions podcast. Through laughter and education, we work to destigmatize kinks, normalize conversations that are taboo, like sex, dating, relationships. Check us out every Monday.
That's right. Don't forget to search Horrible Decisions. That's WHOREIBLE Decisions on the iHeartRadio app, the #1 app for podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Oh, we are loaded on a Thursday. Even some interesting NBA stuff. Live in Los Angeles, it's the Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, and FS1. Greg Cosell 1 hour from now, NFL Meat Sandwich. Joy Taylor is joining me. Tonight, NFL game, Fox, interesting, not real flashy, Tennessee Colts, but playoff spot, division title potentially on the line. Big game, watch it. Joy, how are you?
I'm great. This is a big game tonight.
It is. Boring teams, but good. Tennessee doesn't wow you, but I still contend they're a top 6 teams in the league, 6-7 team.
Colts have a great defense.
We'll see. Yeah.
Tennessee's good offense.
So I want to start with this. Russell Westbrook. Like a lot of times, there's 2 stories. There's the story you see out to the media, and there's the story behind it, the truth. So there was these stories yesterday. Westbrook, he wants to leave the Rockets. Okay, I believe that. A lot of people are leaving the Rockets. But it was funny where his destination was. Westbrook to the Clippers. No, that's an agent trying to, quote, create a market for Westbrook. A really good team's interested. Ooh, the Clippers are interested. Jerry West is interested. And no, they're not. That's an agent that leaks the story so it creates a market. Yeah, the pathetic Knicks may be interested, or awful Charlotte. Even the Charlotte rumor this morning, oh, Charlotte loves him. If they do, it's for one reason. Michael Jordan has Westbrook under his shoe brand and wants to sell shoes. He doesn't want a Westbrook to look pathetic on the market, not cool. They're trying to create this market that everybody wants Westbrook. Oh, Westbrook, very valuable. Nobody that's any good in this league is looking for a 6'3.5" guard that can't shoot, the worst contract arguably in the league, and can't play with top stars. You know, it's funny when you hear this stuff. I heard this for years. Oh, Chris Paul, tough to play with. Excuse me? Well, why? We used to talk about Blake Griffin. We don't anymore. Why? The minute Chris Paul left Blake Griffin, I've never uttered his name until this moment. DeAndre Jordan was a thing in the NBA until Chris Paul left him. We don't talk DeAndre Jordan. Chris Paul's a winner. He doesn't have to win titles. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal, Magic Johnson, the late Kobe, Michael Jordan, LeBron have kept a lot of people from winning titles. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Warriors. A lot of guys don't win titles because you have these, all-time top 5 players, top 10 players. Chris Paul goes to Oklahoma City with a bunch of people you don't even know, and they get to the playoffs. I always hear that Chris Paul is tough to play with. I don't know if he's tough to play with, but everywhere he goes, he wins. I'd love to have Chris Paul on my team. He's old school. He'll get in your face, he'll play defense, he'll yell at you, he'll lead, he'll hit a mid-range jumper, never afraid to take a big shot or guard the top. I love Chris Paul. Westbrook, I've never understood. Here's the reality with Westbrook. And now, all you people who are so mean to me, bigly, very, very hurtful, you have to admit 4 things. Number 1, he was never a number 1. Since KD left in 4 years, he has a single playoff series win. Number 1s in this league do not struggle to get out of the first round, even in the West. He's never been a 1. Number 2 is, he's a complimentary star. He just doesn't understand it. That's what took D. Wade from a really good basketball player to a 3-time champ. D. Wade realized, oh, Shaq's better. Oh, LeBron's better. Westbrook literally joined James Harden, and then he took more shots than he took the year before. He's a complimentary star, not the star. Number 3 is he shoots too much. Last year, he took the second most shots of his career, and he still shoots 4 threes a game. He should be scoring in transition, driving to the basket, some mid-range jumpers. That is it. No more threes. Everybody gets that except him. And number 4, because he's hyper-athletic, as his athleticism wanes, he's not only not a number 1, he's probably a number 3 on really talented teams. I mean, he'd be a number 3 in the Lakers. KD and Kyrie's a number 3 on Brooklyn. Steph and Clay, he's a number 3 on Golden State next year. He's a 3. But there's a lesson to be learned here with Westbrook. Stubborn and rigid never win in any industry. They never win. One of the most impressive things about Nick Saban, the coach of Alabama, is not that he wins football games. A lot of people have won. But these old coaches hit like 55, 60 years old and they get stubborn. Not going to change. My way or the highway. Nick Saban, mid-60s, about 4 years ago, decided, I am going to change my offense completely. We're going to spread it out. We're going to have 4 receivers. We're not going to be a power running game. I'm going to have quarterbacks who are mobile. They can move around. And that's why he's the king. Westbrook's in his 30s, and he's rigid. I get people that are older and rich and successful, and they're like, I'm done. I'm just going to be me. I get it. I understand it. I don't agree with it, but I get it. I don't agree with people in their late 20s and early 30s who are like, I'm not going to change. So I think Westbrook will end up going to like the Knicks or Carolina, and Michael Jordan will bring him on simply to save his shoe deal. That's what that's all about. That's about Michael wants to make it feel like he's still cool and there's a market. And Westbrook will score a bunch of points, and he'll be hyper athletic, and he's fun to watch. But there's a lesson to be learned here. Is that people that cover the NBA fell for athleticism. Everybody's an athlete. The NBA is absurd. 7-footers now, cranking up threes. 7-footers run the floor. 7'4" Porzingis runs the floor like wings used to. This league's nothing but talent. Everybody can jump. Everybody can run. And almost everybody can shoot. Hyper-athleticism doesn't make you a 1 or a championship player. And number 2 is players that adapt win titles. Michael Jordan scored a lot of points. Phil Jackson took over and said, Michael, you got to share the ball. You want to score 50 or you want to win? And Michael Jordan, and Michael can be rigid at times, but Michael adapted. He started becoming a better teammate. Started passing the ball to guys that were clearly not as good, the Kerrs and the Paxsons. Tony Kukoc, is that the lesson to be learned here. If you cover the NBA, hyper-athleticism does not make you a 1. It just makes you fun to watch. And the lesson to be learned for basketball players is adapt and evolve. LeBron started shooting threes halfway through his career. He shoots more every year. He gets better every year. He was a freight train, and now he's a really cool, nimble train. He can take turns and shoot threes. Adapt is always the answer. All right, so this may be the last time I talk about this, as you know on this show, as I'm a defender of all things Carson Wentz, though I acknowledge he's reckless and drives me nuts and inartistic and sometimes is just frustrating. Throw a shoe at a TV, frustrating. But this is more about Brett Favre, who has a weekly, satellite radio show. Very few people who have ever played football are great television analysts. Aikman is... Collinsworth's really, really good. Chris Collinsworth. I think Tony Romo's really good. There's been a handful. And John Madden. And the reason is because most people just play the game. They don't think it. Aikman thinks it. Chris Collinsworth thinks it. Tony Romo thinks it beyond just playing, right? And Brett Favre just played it. And he was great. But we never relied on Brett Favre for insight. I mean, second year in Green Bay, he acknowledged, I didn't know what a nickel defense was. My mom knew what that was. She hates sports. We relied on Brett for instinct. He's one of the great instinctual players ever. So yesterday on his show, he's got Nick Foles. Somebody asked him Wentz, Philadelphia. He went back to this inane argument.
I actually thought that they should have kept Nick Foles rather than Carson Wentz. just based off of production and where they got to. They won a Super Bowl with Foles, and that was a little bit surprising, but they're obviously banking on his upside. How many more years do you let it linger before you stick with him or you cut bait?
That's interesting, because that's what the Packers kept demanding Brett Favre do, not linger about retirement. So they eventually cut bait with Brett, who didn't like it. No reasonable person thinks Foles, who, by the way, is 2-8 since he left Philly, 13 TDs, 9 picks. He was 0-4 in Jacksonville. He wasn't as good as Gardner Minshew. He's now bad in Chicago, doesn't appear as good as Mitch Trubisky. I'd love to have a beer with Brett, play golf with him. He'd probably be fun to hunt with if I did that. But we do not depend on Brett Favre for insight. We relied on Brett Favre for incredible football instincts. But he threw 60 more picks than anybody else, often in the biggest spots in games. Greg Cosell's watched film for 40 years. A couple years ago he was on the show. He wouldn't even get into a debate. He refused to discuss it at length on my show, the Foles is better than Wentz argument.
Carson Wentz is a high-level talent at the quarterback position.
Right.
Carson Wentz is probably a top 3 or 4 talent in the league
Yes,
at the position.
I agree.
Okay? Last year, the Eagles were scoring well over 30 points a game before he got hurt, and he would have been the league MVP. He came back from an ACL. Who knows if he came back too early? Nick Foles, there's an incredibly wide variance in Nick Foles' play from week to week. He shouldn't be in the same conversation with Carson Wentz.
I agree.
So to me, this is not even worth a conversation. This is like trying to tell me that 2 and 2 is 5.
We don't judge Jeremy Lin because of one great month for the Knicks, do we? We don't listen to a band who has one really cool song and think, oh, the Beatles, or even Imagine Dragon. Like we know it's a one-hit wonder. There's a term for a band that has one hit. Nick Foles is a one-hit wonder. That's what he is. He's a one-hit wonder. He's not even a good band. He's a band that had one really awesome hit. Nice kid. Love to have on the roster as long as I don't have to pay him. And I'm done arguing with Brett Favre on Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. No reasonable person thinks that's a debate. Really interesting news out of San Francisco with their quarterback situation. Greg Cosell, top next hour.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Hey friends, I'm Bobby Bones. This is Vets You Should Know, a brand new podcast from iHeartRadio. Throughout this 4-part series, I'm going to introduce you to 4 military veterans with inspiring stories who continue to use their experiences and the lessons they learned in service through their journey as civilians.
It was those members of the military who really helped me regain my voice so that I could be a voice for others.
And as soon as the barrage ended, a Marine that was on our base training Afghan National Army soldiers had yelled to me that I'd been hit.
I was taught this is normal. Expect it from now on. I said, you know what? Somebody has to do better. So I decided if nobody's going to do it, then I guess I have to.
And then you land in country. There's nothing that anyone can do that can prepare you for it.
You won't want to miss hearing from these heroic men and women who have fought overseas and continue to serve their families and communities in new ways. Listen to Vets You Should Know on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
On the road so much during the holidays, can't afford to have our cars break down. Go to carshield.com, put in the code HERD, save 10%. A deductible may apply. Greg Cosell next hour, Drew Bledsoe around the corner. So this happens all the time in every business. Your business, my business, standards change. The bar is raised. Hopefully the bar is raised in your industry and not lowered. What is acceptable? Not only just to be employed, but to pay the good money and to have security. And the San Francisco 49ers, and this feels very, very legit to me. Not all the reports I'm hearing on Westbrook feel legit. This feels legit. They are looking at quarterbacks, and they like Zach Wilson of BYU, who, by the way, I saw a couple years ago. He's a very clever player. Got the height, got the arm, moves around. Little light. He's about 210 pounds. But if you watch him play, especially with Kyler Murray and all this stuff, you look at him and you're like, okay, that works somewhere. I mean, I've watched him play for the last couple of years, and my takeaway is he does a lot of these little clever, he's got a little point guard in him, and he's 6'3", so he's like got some not Kyler the runner, but he's got some Kyler with a big arm. He looks like an NFL quarterback to me. And so this past weekend he played very, very well. So here's the thing about Jimmy Garoppolo, and I think the bar is changing. First of all, we have a supply of quarterbacks now that there's so many. We're getting like 4 and 5 taken in the first round. There's so many. The supply is so great, and most of them are better sooner, that the bar's being raised. And I think now, for a guy that gets hurt, like Jimmy Garoppolo, Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, Carson Wentz gets hurt, and Jimmy Garoppolo get hurt. Garoppolo a lot. You got to give me a wow factor. So Wentz and Aaron Rodgers get banged up, but there is a wow factor. You watch their arms and their arm angles, you're like, okay, 99% of the world can't do that. Garoppolo's problem is he gets hurt a lot, and there's no wow factor. Forget the fact that Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson never get hurt. Lamar doesn't get hurt. Josh Allen doesn't get hurt in the NFL. That's the ideal situation. But if you are a guy that gets banged, that misses time, Carson Wentz, Sam Darnold, and Carson Wentz right now is much better than Sam Darnold, but Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz, Aaron Rodgers is better than Carson Wentz. You have to give me a wow factor. You can't just be, I'm hurt a lot, and I'm solid. That's done. Those days are over. And when by the way, I like Garoppolo, but when he got hurt again, I'm out on him. If Carson Wentz had another serious injury again, even with his wow factor, I'm out on him. If Aaron Rodgers has another serious injury, I'd consider being out on him. Like, the new standard in the NFL is, if you get hurt, if Kirk Cousins got hurt, it's over. You've got to give me a wow factor, because Lamar comes into this league with a wow factor. Kyler's a wow factor. Tua Sunday was a wow factor. Josh Allen's a wow factor. That's the only thing saving Sam Darnold right now. That's it. That's the knock on Baker. I get inconsistency and no wow. The only thing saving Darnold right now, why somebody will pick him up, there is a wow factor. You watch him athletically sometime. Every game, 2 plays, you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. If you get hurt, where's the wow? And with Garoppolo, I simply don't see it. Accuracy, okay. Arm, okay. Athletically, marginal. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, speaking of someone who had an injury but had a wow factor, Tua got back from a devastating hip injury that could have threatened his football career. 1 year later, he's 2-0 as a starter in the NFL, and he's reflecting on his difficult journey.
I don't know if I'll ever be my old self, because when something dramatic like that happens, it's just a continuous process, I think, for me, making a decision to decide play again or not. So I'm just blessed to be here.
He said they were making a decision to decide if he was even going to play football again or not too long ago. And now he is a starter in the NFL. And we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. A big part of coming back from injuries is the mental aspect of it. You have to trust your body again. And if you're an athlete, there's an added element of your job, right? Like if you or I tears an Achilles or ACL or something, like it's going to be a huge inconvenience to our lives. I've done it as a radio producer. It was awful. Like, you can't do anything at work. It's like another job. You have to leave your work and then go to rehab. And if you don't do it, you could not walk right ever again. Like, it's a process, but you're likely still working or you're, being taken care of in some way. If you're an athlete, this is literally your job. So it's your job to rehab and come back, but you're also not able to do what you do, which is play your sport. So there is an added level of anxiety of, am I going to be is it going to happen again as soon as I get hit? Alex Smith, people are watching, they feel a little bit of anxiety watching you. And a hip dislocation and he had a hip dislocation and a posterior wall fracture. Literally a year ago, it was November 2019. Obviously, Bo Jackson is the most notable player with a similar injury, and it ended his career. Dennis Pitta, tight end for the Ravens, suffered multiple hip dislocations and fractures in his career, and the last one ended his career in 2017. I feel like it's a big sigh of relief to see Tua out there moving around, and he looked more mobile than I feel like I saw him in Alabama. Because this was, even talking to Trent Dilfer, this was the fear with Tua, is that he's going to try and do things
but he's slow,
that he's not athletic enough to do.
Yeah.
But in this game, he looked like he has the awareness of not only when to get down, but when to kind of, even the hit that was oh my God, they're both closing in on him, he got underneath it.
Yeah, and for the record, I never bought into the Bo Jackson concerns. Bo Jackson was a power runner who took shots. Tua will probably get hit once a game. About once a game, he get popped. Bo, on a good day, was getting hit 12 times, 13 times, 15 times.
It's a hard comparison.
Yeah, Tua, the key with Tua, we all knew he was accurate. We all knew that. That was never the argument. The question was, where's the wow? And when you watched him instinctively in the red zone and his quick, this is what Dilfer said. He's very intellectually, physically, very twitchy. Stuff just is very natural in short spaces. And it was okay, that's what he's talking about. That's what I saw. And I'm all right, there's, and he's not Kyler the runner, but there was wow there. There were 2 or 3 wow plays. And that to me is, even if he got hurt, I'm okay, Wentz, Aaron Rodgers, I can deal with some injuries. I saw some wow. That was the big revelation to me. I saw some wow.
And we're in a really unique space in the NFL, the quarterback position now, where the standard, you still kind of look for the pocket passer, big guy, strong arm thing, but it doesn't have to be that to be successful.
This is why I defend Jared Goff. Matt Ryan's a pocket passer. If you watch Jared Goff, he actually throws the ball beautifully moving. And the McVay moves the pocket 2 out of 3 plays. So when anybody bangs on Goff, I'm he's not that much of a pocket passer. They roll him 60% of the plays, and he's a very good thrower of the football moving. Derek Carr is better in the pocket than moving. But you saw this weekend, Derek Carr can move. So, you don't have to be a great athlete, but can you roll Phillip Rivers, you can't roll the pocket. You can literally not roll it. Tom Brady, you can't roll the pocket.
And if you're not the best athlete, to the point with Tom Brady, how do you see the game? What is the intellectual side of the game?
Then you've got to be way up, right? Penthouse.
So Antonio Brown played 39 snaps in his Bucs debut, and Bruce Arians wants to have that number decreased going forward. He said his pitch count was a little higher than we anticipated. We tried to go 2 minutes early in the ball game just to get some life, so his pitch count was up a little bit, but he handled it really, really well. I'm hoping we're not throwing the ball that much this week, so hopefully his pitch count goes down. Yeah, I would say that's probably generally a good idea to throw the ball a little less.
I still contend, if I have Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, why can't I run the ball 58% of the time and pass it 42%? This offense is now becoming a passing offense. Does everybody understand how talented Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones are? That is a great running back tandem. Fournette's never gotten the love because he came out with McCaffrey, and McCaffrey is so spectacular as a receiver and runner. We forget that Leonard Fournette's still a 1,000-yard back. I think Tampa Bay is losing itself a little. This should really be one of the few teams in the NFL, if you said, and I know you got Mike Evans and Godwin, I get it, but Gronk's arguably a top 5 tight end blocker. The Iowa right tackle they got out of the draft is a better run blocker than a pass blocker. I've got 2 elite running backs. To me, this team has lost sight of what I think they should be, which is a control the clock, run the ball, and then occasionally go over the top to Mike and AB and Chris Godwin for touchdowns.
Well, you gotta have some balance, too. That game plan was insane. You ran the ball 4 times. Technically it was 5, but 1 was a kneel down, so you ran the ball 4 times.
It's the opposite of what I think they should be. I think the cake is the run game. I think the icing is Mike Evans, AB, and Chris Godwin over the top. 6 targets each, a touchdown each, big
in my
play.
opinion, you can't have cake without icing. Antonio Brown had 5 targets, 3 receptions for 31 yards. Finally, the Patriots host the Ravens on Sunday night, and according to Fox Bet, New England is a 7-point underdog. A Patriots opponent has not been favored by that much in Foxborough since they hosted the Rams in 2001.
Yeah.
And since Gillette Stadium opened in 2002, they've been home underdogs just 5 times and never by more than 3 points.
Okay, so I haven't bet Patriot games this year. This is my favorite New England Cam bet of the year. First of all, Cam against Lamar is going to want to prove to people, I still got it. He's not the only guy that can move around. Secondly is, New England's still playing high-level defense. Go ask Buffalo, who just routed Seattle. Go ask Buffalo. Go ask the Raiders. Okay, this is a football team that's still playing good defense. This is going to be an ugly, low-scoring game, and Baltimore's going to win it. But to give New England 7 points here makes no sense. I'm going to, for the first time this year, take New England.
I mean, it is a lot of points. Now, obviously, the home field is a little relative with
What's the weather
the
in
fan
Boston?
situation.
If it's crappy weather, it's going to make it more of a run
No, I'm
game.
with you. They still have a decent defense. I mean, obviously, they're playing the Jets last week, so you can't get too dramatic, but they did win 30-27. Cam was 27-35, 274 yards, 16 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. So I didn't think of that angle, but that is kind of interesting. And Lamar talked about Cam this week.
It's like,
said he's like the OG Superman.
Don't you think
a little something
if
there?
Cam was playing Kyler or Lamar, he'd be like, maybe a little older than you, but I'm going to really play inspired football. And he's going to hear all week, Cam's hurt all week. Oh, Lamar Jackson's unbelievable.
And Lamar had no passing touchdowns last week.
No, they're not
He had
scoring
no
that
rushing
way.
touchdown, 58 rushing yards against the Colts, who have a very good defense.
All right. Good stuff, Joy, with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
Drew Bledsoe, decade and a half in the NFL, was a 4-time Pro Bowler, second most passing yards in Patriot history. I think we all know who's number 1. Drew Bledsoe. Patriots 9 years, Bills, Cowboys joining us live, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz, the best or nothing. So, it is interesting. I was saying to Joy, when I look at the personnel of Tampa, I actually see a running team that can burn you over the top. Last week, I thought they completely abandoned the run. Drew, have you ever been in a situation where you actually went to a coach and said, we don't run it enough? We're losing our identity. I mean, is that something quarterbacks do?
Well, not generally. I mean, we're still a little bit selfish. First of all, thanks, Joy, for the shout out to the pocket passers. I feel like we're kind of dinosaurs these days, so I really appreciate that. There are times, when now I was always with defensive head coaches, so I was with Parcells, and I was with Pete Carroll, and I was with Belichick. They all love to run the ball and play defense, so I was always on the opposite side. Say, hey, come on, let me throw a little bit. But when you've got a guy like we had Curtis Martin for a little while, like why not hand it to that guy? That works pretty good, right? And then there are times when you look at it, you're like, okay, hey, look, this is working, let's go with it. And then there are other times you're like, hey, this one ain't working, let me throw it to Ben Coates a few times.
Yeah, when I look at Tampa's personnel, I think they have underrated backs, and I think their offensive line, their center and their right tackle are more road graders than pass protectors. So that's just kind of my opinion. So when I watched Kyler Murray and Tua play this week, and I've got to be honest with you, that's the most fun I've had watching a football game all year. And I had reservations about Tua. I did. He's not very big. He doesn't have a huge arm, and he's got some wiggle, but not a ton. Were you surprised at all that his college game appears to translate very well to professional football?
Well, no, he played college football at Alabama, Colin. I mean, so it wasn't, it's not like he was going from, Alcorn State into the NFL. He was playing at Alabama, which is about as close as you can get to an NFL team. But I watched him play in college, and there are a few things I look for when I watch quarterbacks. Number one is how accurate are they? And a lot of times at these top schools, that accuracy can be hidden because guys are wide open. They got a lot of time, but I watched Tua play, and he was hitting guys right here a lot.
Yeah.
And so that part is huge. But then you look at the way that he sees the field, and he doesn't. A lot of times you watch a college quarterback, they'll lock onto a guy. They go zone read, and then they're going to throw it to that guy, or they're going to run it. Well, I watched Tua's eyes in college, and he's seeing the entire field, and so that really was not a surprise to me that his game was able to translate that quickly into the NFL game.
Yeah. What do you make of Kyler Murray, who's probably the opposite of you in terms of what you did? But I will say this. These baseball guys, I think he throws an absolutely beautiful football. And even though he may play differently from you, what do you see with Kyler?
Well, first of all, I'm offended, Colin. I mean, I was pretty explosive. No, I love Kyler's game, and first of all, he's got that athletic ability that is complete and utter mystery to me. But as a pocket passer, I look at this guy, man. He throws it really, really nice. He throws it really accurately. He's got plenty of arm strength. And he also seems to see the field and throw it on time really well. So I'm a huge fan of this kid's game, man. I really, really am. And, I think Steve Young has said it many, many times. He didn't learn to be a great quarterback until he learned to work from the pocket first, and then, pull it down and make those plays with his legs. And Kyler's showing the ability to do both. I think he's got a huge future, and he's really fun to watch.
Drew, it's interesting. Aaron Rodgers been banged up a little bit. Eli Manning never got hurt. Aaron Rodgers hurt. Favre never was. Garoppolo hurt. Joe Montana not as often. Is it genetics? Is it luck? Is there a reason Brady and Eli and Favre, they just don't get hurt, and then some guys are hurt a lot? Because I sit here and I watch it. If I ran a football team and I'd think, I'm about done with Garoppolo's injuries. Is he fragile? Is it his fault? Like, you played in this league for a decade and a half. Were there guys, Drew, that they just have high ankle sprains easier than you got them?
Yeah, it seems like there are some guys that just seem to be overly susceptible. Now, part of that is just luck, as you indicated. Some of it's genetics. And then there's another component to it. And Russell Wilson, who I know you love and I love, you watch the way that he plays, you don't see him get hit hard. He protects himself. Carson Wentz is sort of the opposite. He's a big, strong, athletic dude, but man, he gets hit hard a lot. And so there's also that kind of component of protecting yourself and understanding that the best ability is availability, and not allowing yourself to get hit hard. And I think some of these guys have to learn that.
You made 4 playoff appearances just as a Patriots quarterback, and I've always believed that football, November football it's almost a different league. September, October, it's sunny, there's no wind, you can get away with an average arm. Now you can't. Now you got to throw the ball through crappy weather, and the strong arm guys, the guys that can, the Favres, that's you had a big arm. So when take me to how the game for you changed as you moved toward Thanksgiving. Did you prepare differently? Were there throws you wouldn't make? How did you change mid-season going forward? Because you're going to play in snow now at some point for some of these guys.
Well, first of all, when I got to Buffalo, anytime Jim Kelly and I were down around Dan Marino, we'd be like, dude, you threw the ball in Miami. How easy is that? Come throw the ball in Buffalo in November and December, and then talk to me about all your passing yards, Danny. I hope you're out there listening, bud. But yeah, it does change. It becomes more about ball security. It becomes about field position. You have to understand as a quarterback that some of those chances that you might have taken earlier in the season when the weather was better, you're not going to take. And then you also take, like in Buffalo, for example, now you got wind, you got some wet, and so, it makes it really hard as a quarterback, because if it's windy, you generally just throw it harder and you can cut it through the wind. But if it's wet, you got to throw it softer so you guys can catch it. Well, if it's windy and wet, now you're really in a predicament. So then you just have to come back to just protecting the football, and hoping that you can play some field position and win it at the end.
By the way, you're one of the 2 or 3 great quarterbacks in the history of the Pac-12. You also coach high school football in Bend, Oregon, so you know the Ducks very well. Justin Herbert, to me, has been shocking. Joe Burrow, we knew could play and would have to. What do you make of Herbert? To me, he may have the 2nd or 3rd best arm in the league. He's a 4-point biology mate. I watched that kid play, and I thought he would be good. I am shocked how good he is.
Well, I think you got to go dig into the archives, Colin, because I think we talked about these quarterbacks last year, and I'm pretty sure I predicted that Herbert was going to be awfully good. I watched him play out here a lot. I was not a big fan of what the Ducks did with him. Offensively, I really felt like it was, at a lot of times, that they wasted his abilities and his talents in their Ducks offense. But when I watched him, it's like we talked about earlier, I watched the throws that he made. A lot of times he's throwing to guys that were really tightly covered, but he's putting the ball in the right place. Tons of velocity, and then he has that added element. He's an athlete, too. You saw in the Rose Bowl last year, he basically won that game with his legs. So I'm really, really happy for him. Everything I know about him, he's a great kid. In spite of the fact that he played for the Ducks, I'm really cheering for him. And I think he's in a good situation. I think that the Chargers are set up to put some guys around him, which ultimately that's going to determine his ceiling.
By the way, Doubleback Winery, are you at your winery right now?
I'm actually not today. I was up there just a couple days ago. We've been doing a bunch of virtual wine tasting, so if you ever want to do a virtual wine tasting, Colin, I'm your man.
Doubleback, is it doubleback.com? Is that the site?
Doubleback.com, that's the site, man. Thank you.
You bet. Good seeing you, Drew.
Thanks, Colin. Talk to you soon, bud.
You bet. Drew's probably, in my lifetime, Warren Moon and Drew Bledsoe are probably the best Pac-12 quarterbacks of all time. Just raw talent. Herbert, maybe 3. He's that good. I mean, it's crazy. And, what's funny about this is what you and I talked about, is that Oregon has a very conservative offense. They did. And then in the Rose Bowl, when there was no more games left, Oregon's like, okay, just do what you want to do. If you just go back and watch a replay of the Rose Bowl, which is kind of fun, when a guy stars in the NFL, go back and watch the Rose Bowl. Folks, he's Trevor Lawrence. He does all the stuff Trevor Lawrence does. I don't even know if Trevor Lawrence is a 4-point biology major. Like, this is what Trevor Lawrence is going to look like. Big arm, big kid, runs well, smart. And he started for 3 years. So you're getting a guy with a lot of college starts. He's seen every defense. Herbert is, Burrow is good, there's no question. But nobody thought Herbert was going to be this. I think he has now, he leads the NFL in 300-yard passing games. There was no preseason.
The bowl game sold it for me.
Like, go to the Rose Bowl. Wisconsin had a great defense. Flummoxed them for 3.5 hours. They couldn't figure out he was making guys miss all over the field. The Rose Bowl is like, when you watch the Rose Bowl now, if you went back today and watched it, you'd be like, oh my God, of course. He was so much better than all the other players on the field. And he won Senior Bowl MVP. So again, nobody watches that. Right? We're not watching the Senior Bowl. But if you go to the Rose Bowl, you're like, Wisconsin could not stop him. And Oregon runs a conservative offense. They don't have great NFL receivers. They don't have great NFL tight ends. So good for him. Coming up next, the Lamar Jackson criticism is now absurd. And I'm just gonna give you one number and you'll stop criticizing him. That's coming up.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific.
RecTech Grills with a Q.com, RECTEQ. Grills built by grillers for grillers. Smart grill technology. Turn the grill on by your phone. Cook your meat via your phone. So, Lamar Jackson yesterday was on the Rich Eisen show, and one of the things he talked about, he said to Rich Eisen in the show, he said, hey, Rich, I'm hearing people call stuff out when I'm at the line. Like, he's going to run, he's going to run, he's going to run. Well, let's just be honest about that. Everybody does that with all the quarterbacks. That's what middle linebackers do. That's not because Lamar Jackson's totally predictable. If he was totally predictable, he wouldn't be 25-5 in his last 30 games. That's not a knock on Lamar Jackson. Everybody's calling out stuff to everybody. That's what you do in the NFL. Teddy Bruschi used to face Peyton Manning, and he said he was talking the whole game. He'd throw stuff out there just to confuse it. The whole game they're guessing. So I'm not knocking Rich for the question or Lamar for the answer, but that happens all over the league. I am not going to just sit here and defend Lamar Jackson on numbers, because I'd crush you. The 2 losses this year are to Pittsburgh and Kansas City. So Baltimore has lost to teams with a record of 16-1. I'm not going to use that. I'm not going to use the fact that if you take out games Lamar Jackson has played in his career, not against Patrick Mahomes, he's 25-2. I am not going to use that. I'm not going to mention that. In the games he started, 30, he's 25-5. I would not dare be so superficial to mention that. Here's what I'm going to mention. Here's the numbers I'm going to mention. Okay, it's all about winning to me, right? Winning and staying healthy. He does both. A lot of comparisons have been made to Colin Kaepernick, who, shocked us with his running ability, better runner than thrower, got to a Super Bowl. And I've heard comparisons. Ooh, Kaepernick had Greg Roman as an offensive coordinator. Lamar runs better than he throws. He's Kaepernick. And he's got Greg Roman. It's the same kind of offense. No. Lamar Jackson is so much better than Kaepernick. on 5 levels. So I put up Kaepernick's best year, 2013. He was great that year. That was his best year. And Lamar's best year. Folks, it's not close in anything. Lamar is a significantly better thrower. 66% completion of 58. One guy was 21-8. 2-1 touchdowns, right? Lamar was 36 touchdowns to 6 picks. One passer rating's 91. The other's 113. One rushed for 500 yards, the other for 1,200. He's a better runner. He's a better thrower. Here's the other two things. And I say this as it's sourced. I had a source for a year, 2 years, in the quarterback room for the Niners when Kaepernick was there. Lamar loves football. Loves to play it, loves to talk about it, loves to work out, likes to train, likes to practice. Lamar loves football. Kaepernick was hit and miss. My buddy that was in the film room was like, some days he loved it, some days he wasn't into it. What did Jimmy Johnson tell us on Monday? Passion's everything. Do you care? Remember Jimmy Johnson was talking about what kind of coach is. Are you smart? Do you love football? John Gruden says that. Only guy that's ever loved football more than me is Andy Reid. Kaepernick didn't love football on a daily basis. Some days he did, some days he didn't. And that's from somebody who trained him and was in the quarterback room. Lamar loves it. Secondly, they have different personalities. Lamar's a leader. People like Lamar. People like being around Lamar. His teammates like him. His teammates defend him. Jay Glazer came out a year before Kaepernick was known as controversial. And he stated, and Jay Glazer doesn't miss on this stuff, Kaepernick didn't have a lot of allies. He'd often eat lunch alone. He's kind of an odd guy. He's a different guy. A different personality. So not only is Lamar a much better thrower, and a much better runner, and much more consistent, and a much better winner, he's much more passionate about it. He loves football. I mean, you watch Lamar. I mean, he'll incomplete a pass on third down. He is so upset. Like, you see him, he's like stomping his feet. He cares so much about winning. Kaepernick never quite had that passion. In fact, it's not quite. Kaepernick just didn't have that passion. I mean, Brady's in this thing for 20 years. He's still screaming and yelling at people. That's somebody that loves football. Lamar loves football. Some of these guys, they like it. A lot of guys, Tony Gonzalez always says, a lot of guys in this league like what football can do for them, and they like football. Pays well. They don't love it. Hall of Famers mostly love. And the trajectory right now for Lamar, excuse me, if he keeps winning, he'll get Hall of Fame votes. And the other thing is leadership, and I can't quantify it, but it matters. Lamar's a leader. I'm not gonna give you the 30 starts, 25 wins. I'm not going to give you the 27 games he's not faced Patrick Mahomes. He's 25-2. I'm not going to give you the numbers. He's 16-1. The teams he's lost to this year, 16-1. I'm not going to give you those. I'm going to give you leadership. I'm going to give you passing. If you're going to compare him to Kaepernick and still fight for Kaepernick to get a chance, Kaepernick's not in the same galaxy. Not in the same galaxy. And he got to a Super Bowl. Greg Cosell next.
Hey guys, it is Bobby Bones. This is Vets You Should Know, a brand new podcast from iHeartRadio. Throughout this 4-part series, I'm going to introduce you to 4 military veterans with inspiring stories who continue to use their experiences and the lessons they learned in service through their journey as civilians. You won't want to miss hearing from these heroic men and women who have fought overseas and continue to serve their families and communities in new ways. Listen to Vets You Should Know on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts. I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
Hey guys, it is Bobby Bones. This is Vets You Should Know, a brand new podcast from iHeartRadio. Throughout this 4-part series, I'm going to introduce you to 4 military veterans with inspiring stories who continue to use their experiences and the lessons they learned in service through their journey as civilians. You won't want to miss hearing from these heroic men and women who have fought overseas and continue to serve their families and communities in new ways. Listen to Vets You Should Know on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for The Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Ah, here we go. It's hour 2. It's a Thursday live in Los Angeles. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we're on Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio, FS1. I'm in a very good mood today. I took 3 milligrams of melatonin last night, slept like a baby. 8.5, just pow. Out.
I'm scared to take that during the week. I'm so susceptible to medicine.
So am I.
Yeah, so I only take that on the weekends because I am afraid I'll sleep through my alarm.
So I knew sports tonight, sports Monday night, so I knew last night no sports. So I went out with my wife dinner, came home, watched a couple TV shows. Unforgotten is my favorite new show. Unforgotten. So good. And I took a 3 milligrams of melatonin. 5 minutes later, dog licking my face. I don't know what planet I'm on. Oh, it was a great night's sleep.
I was ready to go to bed at like 6. It's 6:30.
So dark.
It's so dark, so early now. I'm like, oh my God, that was a whole night ahead of me.
It's good to have you and Greg Cosell in a couple of minutes. So, the story is today, Westbrook wants out of Houston. Okay, all right, Westbrook's not easy. I get it. Never been a big fan of his game, although he's fun to watch. Let's not let James Harden off the hook here. According to Kendrick Perkins, who's very well connected in the NBA, James Harden won't return anybody's phone call for the Rockets. That's not great. James Harden is a much better offensive basketball player than D. Wade. But what made D. Wade a legend, first of all, unlike Harden, D. Wade loved defense. But what takes great scorers and great talent to legends is not your vertical jump or your jumper. It's leadership and self-awareness. Dwayne Wade was very self-aware. Oh, Shaq's more dominant. It's just LeBron's team. Even though I'm the mayor of Wade County, LeBron's better than me. The ability to go, okay, I know what I am. I understand it. Self-awareness is really, really important in the NBA. I've been watching this league for 4 decades. And there's only been about 7, I've said this before, there's been 7 players who are just different. Magic was different. Shaq was different. Kobe was different. Michael was different. Bird was different. LeBron's different. Kevin Durant, if he can stay healthy, he's just 7-footer, shoots like a guard. Everybody else is just really, really talented. Some are super talented. Harden's one of those. But James won't give you defense on one end of the floor, which pisses good players off. Because Kobe played it, LeBron played it, Michael played it, Bird tried to play it, Magic couldn't play it but tried. James doesn't even give you the effort. That really ticks off great. Anthony Davis is great. Kawhi is great. Paul George, Klay Thompson. Steph tries. He's just no good at it. James Harden doesn't even try. So he got no self-awareness there. He won't give it to you on the defensive end. And the great players in this game, Magic was big. It was hard for him to stop little guys. Chris Paul plays defense. Again, the great players in this game, Giannis plays it. Paul Pierce played it. LeBron, Kawhi, Chris Paul. Harden doesn't give you that. So he has no self-awareness that it really ticks off great players. Kevin McHale played it. Bird tried to play it. The second thing is he got no leadership. There's no leadership skills here. He's not returning phone calls. He couldn't play with Chris Paul. He can't play with now Westbrook. And I keep hearing, he's great friends with him. That doesn't mean anything. I could be great friends with Joy. If we didn't work on the air, it wouldn't work. The friendship thing's always been, I laugh to me. Oh, I get along great with him. She is the best. Are they good at work? No. Can't be friends. This has got to work. No matter how good friends we are. Right now it's called, I'm working, I'm on the air, I'm talking. There's advertisers and affiliates and stuff. I don't care how good they get along as friends. That means nothing at the barbecue. Game time, 7:30. Do you play together well? So I never bought into Westbrook, Harden are friends. So what? I mean, Westbrook's a likable guy. Everybody that I've ever met that met Westbrook, they all like him. Everybody likes Westbrook. I've never met a guy in the league that doesn't like Westbrook. He's a great guy to hang out with. He's funny. He's stylish. He's a trash talker. He's very charitable. Westbrook's a great guy. He's just, as a player, he's really hard to play with. And so, but let's not just make this Westbrook's a bad guy. Harden is supposed to be the star of the franchise. Won't return phone calls, won't play defense, not really a leader. Playoff disappointment. He's kind of a one-trick pony. He'll score a bunch of points. Doesn't make anybody better. You know, this is not just a day, let's just hammer Westbrook, who I've always thought's got limitations. Some of this is just like the burden of being the number one is today, you got to take some of the heat too. It's not all Westbrook. A lot of this is on Harden. Let's bring in Greg Cosell, 41 years, NFL films. He's our NFL meat sandwich. You play fantasy football, you bet football, you just love football, you like to talk football. Nobody better than Greg Cosell joining me live. All right, let's just break down. Let's go Saints Bucks. So I felt Tampa. Let's start with Tampa. I really believe their right tackle is a very good run blocker. Gronk. I like Leonard Fournette. I like Ronald Jones. I think they should be more run-based, 55-45. I really do. I see power running here with great receivers over the top. Sunday, they just said, no, we're gonna throw the ball deep. These are low percentage throws. And I thought, oh, you've lost your identity. You're not even sure what you are. That's what it looked like to me watching Tampa. It was an odd bunch of low percentage throws. They didn't establish anything. That's what I saw. What did the film see?
Well, there were a couple of things that the film showed. Number one, and it started with the first play of the game, their offensive line really struggled in pass protection, one-on-one individual pass protection across the board. And number two, they really struggled to win versus man coverage. The Saints committed to playing a meaningful amount of man coverage, and they struggled to win versus man coverage. Now, Evans has always had a difficult time with Lattimore. Lattimore, who's not had a great year, he always gets up to play against Mike Evans and plays him very well. And even great quarterbacks, even first ballot Hall of Famers like Tom Brady, Colin, there's a cumulative effect of pressure. When there's bodies around you seemingly on every throw, you get uncomfortable being in the pocket, and you naturally start to play a little bit faster, and you're just uncomfortable playing the position. And when you then look and you see that people aren't really open and you don't have defined window throws, that just exacerbates the problem. So they really struggled throwing the ball. The question of whether they should run it more, that's a philosophical question.
Yeah.
And maybe it's true, but this is, with their weapons, this is who they choose to most predominantly be right now.
Okay, let's talk about the Saints. They ate up that Bucs defense that we acknowledge, especially up front, is very good. They had seemingly no troubles with it. So what did Todd Bowles do or not do as a defensive coordinator?
Well, let's look at it from the perspective of the Saints first. What the Saints did is they predominantly lined up in base personnel, and they also, with their quick passing game, the ball gets out of Breeze's hand very quickly. So this is philosophical for a defensive coordinator. Number one, most of your pressure packages do not come out of your base defense. They come out of your sub-nickel or your sub-dime, meaning 5 or 6 defensive backs. And the Saints played a lot in their base, so they kept the Bucs in their base, which minimizes the pressure schemes. And number two, the philosophy is that, hey, if a quarterback is going to get rid of the ball so quick, I'm not necessarily going to pressure him because whoever I use as a blitzer is not going to get there. The ball's going to be out, so I'm wasting a player. So that's a philosophy that a lot of coaches have when they play against quarterbacks that are very rhythmic and the ball comes out.
You can be, I said this yesterday, the Giants play the Eagles this weekend. The Giants may be the best 2-7 team I've seen in a while. Every week I've watched them 5 times the entire game. They've won 2 of them, and they could have won the other 3. I watch a team, and I see Miami last year, which is, Miami last year, like, needed more speed. They didn't have a true corner. But at the end of the year, I'm like, man, they play hard. They're buying in. They're losing competitive. I got to tell you something. I don't think it's crazy to suggest the Giants this morning are the best team in that division.
It's a great point because defensively is where you really want to talk about the Giants. Of course, everybody wants to talk about Daniel Jones, but I think defensively they've really improved. They are a very difficult defense, Colin, to play against. They have multiple fronts, the way they use their players. They have blitz packages that are really interesting. There's a lot of disguise and latent movement to get to specific coverage concepts. They're a tough defense to decipher and to play against. And I think that this is a very difficult matchup this Sunday for the Philadelphia Eagles, whose offense we know has not been very good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll tell you what, when you I watched that Rams game. Was the first time I watched, and I'm like, oh, they're making Goff incredibly uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, this is all quarterbacks struggle with that. Goff especially. I mean, Goff, when he's comfortable, wins. When he's uncomfortable, loses. And I do think Carson Wentz this week is going to be uncomfortable. I think the Giants are going to win this football game. I really do. I really like the Giants.
Well, when you play against them, you have to validate and confirm what the coverage is after the snap of the ball. So you have to make your quarterback think that through really quickly. He has to the term I use is eliminate and isolate. You have to eliminate what's not there and isolate what is there, but you have to do that after the snap. Against most defenses, and defenses don't want this to be the case, but against most defenses and the great quarterbacks can eliminate and isolate before the snap. The Giants are making you do it after the snap.
All right, Tua's got 2 games. They didn't ask much the first game. They asked a lot more the second game. Now, I did say this. Arizona's defense, outside of Budda Baker, doesn't have a lot of elite players, so he was moving the ball up and down against, not always a great pass rush. But Miami's offensive line's a work in progress, so let's give Tua credit here. What did you see? What did the film show you that you liked?
Well, I think the film showed me that Chan Gailey understands exactly what Tua's traits and skill set are. Tua is really quick on his drop, plants that back foot. He's a rhythmic timing quarterback. That's his game. There's not a lot of mystery to what Tua's game is. And I thought when I watched that tape, literally every throw, maybe with just 1 or 2 exceptions, the ball came out when he hit that back foot, which means that the reads and the throws were defined by the pass game concepts, and they also did play action and play action boot, and that also fits his game extremely well. So I thought it was a great mix with Chan Gailey clearly understanding what Tua is. That's the kind of quarterback he is.
By the way, Kyler Murray, I watched him his first game as a pro last year. I'm like, okay, let me see another one. His second game, I came on the air and I told Joy, I'm like, he's even more elusive than Russell Wilson and throws as pretty a ball. I think he's just getting better and better and better. I really do. I thought last week, despite losing, I think he's a handful, and I really think there's more to him. I think every third game, I feel like I get a different version. What is the film saying on Kyler?
Yeah, I think overall it's very positive. I think that he throws a beautiful ball. He's a very good thrower. He certainly has great movement. The designed run game is a meaningful part of what the Cards do on offense. And of course, he's got scrambling second reaction ability. I think for him to become great, and I'm not one who uses that term loosely, he needs to become a little more consistent as a passer in terms of ball placement, throw after throw after throw. He had a very good game this week, and then on that critical 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2 play at the end, which is by NFL standards an easy throw, he throws it in the dirt. So I think that there's a lot to like about him, and he's special as a mover and can make really excellent throws, and I think he's definitely an ascending player.
So it's interesting. The first month of the year, Josh Allen was completing 78 of his throws, what you call downfield, 15 plus.
Yep.
The next 4 weeks, he completed 25% of those. So I did some diving on this, deep diving. And when John Brown's available, he's a different quarterback. The numbers change. And I watched him this weekend, and I'm like, what am I getting this inconsistency for? Because he's always big and he's always got a strong arm and he's always mobile. Could it be that there are receivers for young quarterbacks that they feel very comfortable throwing to, and when they're not available, they're a different quarterback? And could it be that for Josh Allen?
Well, it's not just John Brown as a person. Here's what it is, Colin. This team lines up with 4 wide receivers on the field, what we call 10 personnel, 1 back and 4 wide receivers on over 20% of their offensive snaps. And that's with John Brown missing time. So they want to play meaningfully out of 10 personnel. And Josh Allen's passing numbers out of 10 personnel are off the charts. So when they're missing John Brown, they can't play out of 10 personnel the way they want to. And Josh Allen is very good as a spread quarterback. So this is just something tactically that they do exceptionally well. So while John Brown is a very good receiver, it's not just John Brown. It's what he allows them to do from a personnel and tactical perspective.
So your play of the week is with Ryan Tannehill, and we were talking about this. I loved Tennessee at the end of last year, and I loved him at the start of this year. They lose close to the Steelers, and then they go out, and this often happens. You play a big emotional rivalry game. next week you're flat. They go out and play Cincinnati. 8 minutes in, you're like, okay, they're just not here ready to play. And then last week they come out and they're very dominant early. And I believe that is what Tennessee is. I don't think it's Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's a post-Steeler result. So, I've said this to Joy, is I was never a Tannehill guy. Now I reluctantly embrace that he's good enough to win playoff games. So that's if you're good enough to win playoff games, you're probably good enough to get to a Super Bowl. What do you make of Tannehill in Tennessee right now?
I'll answer that this way. I think they're walking a fine line, Colin. I think that they have to be careful because the bottom line in the NFL is your pass game and your run game have to be able to operate independently of one another any given week. They can't be dependent on each other for you to be successful. So in other words, you can't just have a pass game that works off Derrick Henry. Your pass game any given week has to be independent of Derrick Henry and the run game. And I think right now they're trying to figure that out and working through that. Because if they don't work through that and their pass game is just a function of their run game, it will not be good enough to win big games. So, having said that, let's go to this big play because this was a great throw by Tannehill, and this was a slot fade to A.J. Brown, who's a very, very good receiver. But this came on a 3rd and 2. And 3rd and 2 is important for this play. They're in a 2-by-2 set, 2 receivers to each side of the formation. Because it's 3rd and 2, the Bears are playing man coverage. It's a man coverage down in distance. Let's focus to the field side of the formation. And there's A.J. Brown in a wide slot with Buster screen, a good slot corner matched in press coverage. Now, a slot fade is a very common route in the NFL. All teams have it in their playbook. And you'll see that Buster screen is with Brown. He's right with him in his hip pocket. This is when Tannehill delivers the football because this is a spot throw. He's not waiting to see if A.J. Brown wins. This is a spot throw, and you couldn't place it in A.J. Brown's hands any better than Tannehill did. That play was made by the throw.
Good stuff. Greg Cosell, NFL Films, 41 years. Good talking to you, Greg.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it.
You bet. The Kyler stuff is, and it's funny. A couple of weeks ago, Kyler had a really bad start. Who was it against? Was it against Seattle? In like the first quarter, you're like, okay, he's just. And Russell has this, by the way. Russell Wilson will have these quarters when you're like, oh, he's just. Maybe it's a baseball thing. Like he is just off. It is just not there. But boy, when Kyler heats up and gets into a rhythm, they say this about baseball pitchers. Some guys are better. Like they need 5 innings. They're better. Nolan Ryan was legendary. If Nolan got through 5, he was going 8. Verlander was like that. Like Kyler's one of those guys. He can be spotty, but when he gets rolling, when he gets in a rhythm, it's like shortstop to first throw, man. He is money. All right. Official time to read a spot. Coming up, Chris Broussard on James Harden, Westbrook, and the mess with the Houston Rockets. It is officially a mess. Westbrook wants out, and Harden won't return anybody's calls. Houston's gone from legitimate to a dumpster fire. Broussard talks about that.
Want more Herd? The Herd streams 24 hours a day, 7 days a week within the iHeartRadio app. Search Herd to listen live or on demand whenever you like.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
Hey friends, I'm Bobby Bones. This is Vets You Should Know, a brand new podcast from iHeartRadio. Throughout this 4-part series, I'm going to introduce you to 4 military veterans with inspiring stories who continue to use their experiences and the lessons they learned in service through their journey as civilians.
It was those members of the military who really helped me regain my voice so that I could be a voice for others.
And as soon as the barrage ended, a Marine that was on our base training Afghan National Army soldiers had yelled to me that I'd been hit.
I was taught this is normal. Expect it from now on. I said, you know what? Somebody has to do better. So I decided if nobody's going to do it, then I guess I have to.
and then you land in country. There's nothing that anyone can do that can prepare you for it.
You won't want to miss hearing from these heroic men and women who have fought overseas and continue to serve their families and communities in new ways. Listen to Vets You Should Know on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Tonight, division rivals square off as the Colts and Titans battle for first place in the AFC South. It all starts at 7:30 Eastern on Fox, NFL Network, and streaming on Prime Video.
Low-scoring game. Take the Titans by a touchdown. Cozy bras, underwear, loungewear, pajamas. TommyJohn.com. Code HERD. Limited time only. $25 off site-wide. TommyJohn.com. Code HERD. Yeah, it's actually a good football game. It means a lot. There's a couple games this week that are going to be ugly but meaningful. This is the first. The second, the Giants are going to beat the Eagles. And I love Carson Wentz, and I love the Eagles. This morning, I think the Giants are the best team in that division. They may not win a lot. It's the best team in that division. Even Greg Cosell said it. They're the Miami Dolphins of last year. Watch the Giants go on a run here and win like 4 out of 6. Every time I watch them, I'm like, I think they're... Just Daniel Jones makes 3 mistakes a game. Get down to 2, they win the games. That's it.
Can you imagine if they had Saquon this year?
That's what they need. They're actually very lucky. What they need...
They already have.
Well, what they need is available in the number 2 and 3 and 4 draft pick. They need a star receiver, so Sterling Shepard could be a dude. Because Saquon, Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard, and a star receiver. That's exactly what they need is a star receiver. And there's a kid out of LSU... that is about the 4th pick. So the Giants get lucky here. The Cowboys actually need nothing in the first 5 picks. They don't need a quarterback, according to Jerry. And they don't, and that's what's available. What the Cowboys need is really available in pick 15 to 25. Another corner, and there's a bunch of those. That's why Dallas should trade down. Like the Jets and the Jags need quarterbacks, right? According to all the experts. I don't think the Jets do, but they'll pick one. Quarterbacks line up with what they need. The Giants are perfect. They need a receiver, and you don't want to draft him 1 or 2. He may not even be a 3, but the Giants are going to win enough games. They're going to draft top 10. But if you get the 5th pick, go get a superstar receiver, and that's exactly what the Giants need. The defense is fine. Saquon, Evan Ingram, Daniel Jones, star receiver, Sterling Shepard. That's a division-winning team. Joy with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
Well, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Brett Favre said that he thinks the Eagles should have kept Nick Foles instead of Carson Wentz after their Super Bowl season.
Can't do it.
Doug Peterson was asked about these comments, and he came to the defense of his quarterback.
Carson's our guy. Carson's our draft pick. Carson's the guy that is going to carry us and lead this football team. And listen, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. Those aren't my words. Those aren't Howie's words, Jeffrey's words. Those are his words. I mean, I respect that opinion. Whatever he wants to say, that's fine. And we're going to remain friends. It doesn't bother me one way or the other. All I know is that Carson Wentz is our guy.
I'm amazed. I could not, with a straight face, be a media person. I understand when the fans get frustrated with the media. I could not, with a straight face, ask Doug Peterson at a press conference, what about Jalen Hurts? You're paying Carson Wentz $150 million. I couldn't ask a question at a press conference.
But you kind of have to.
Do I?
I think you do. If there's enough of the conversation...
They keep winning.
Locally.
They're in first place. I don't know.
I think it's a ridiculous notion. But I'm telling you, having worked locally, as you have as well, sometimes these conversations within the local media and within the local fan base and area get a little bit of a drumbeat. Like, for example, there was a legitimate conversation about if the Dolphins should bench Ryan Tannehill for Matt Moore.
Again, I'd go
for
over
a long time.
I'd punch a sports writer right in the neck. You can't ask that.
I mean, for a long time. Like, so, if and I'm sure the question was asked, like, is that a possibility? Listen, I think Matt Moore is an excellent backup quarterback.
That's all he is.
But that is not a real conversation that anyone in the building is having. However, sometimes those conversations just get a little bit of life, and you have to ask. It's a little ironic that Brett Favre is saying this about Carson Wentz when Carson Wentz and Brett Favre are very similar style of play, and he's talking about efficiency, and that is not what Brett Favre is known for.
Brett Favre is saying you got to make a decision on this. It's like the whole knock on Brett Favre his last 4 years is he didn't want to retire. He kept threatening it. Like, again, Brett Favre's a legend. I'm not looking for his opinion on Nick Foles. Like, I'm done with that segment.
Well, I mean, and of course everyone's entitled to their opinion. Like, we all have opinions about everything. And sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. That's fine. But we have enough evidence that Nick Foles is not as good as Carson Wentz. And listen, at first, when it first happened and Nick Foles first won the Super Bowl, I think it's fair to legitimately have that conversation. Like, you just won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
In the moment.
But like then, when you get 15 more starts and you're like, oh, this isn't.
Yeah, we've had space and time, and he's gone to another team.
And been bad.
Right.
Jacksonville, and then bad again. By the way,
so we can see now.
Gardner Minshew and Mitch Trubisky, I could argue in both cases, just win more games. I'm not even an argument. They do win more games at Jacksonville and Chicago, respectively. They win more games. It's about winning games.
So the Colts and Titans face off in a pivotal AFC South showdown tonight for first place in the division. The Colts don't have a great recent history on Thursday night, losing their last 4 in a row.
Really?
But they are on the road against Tennessee. They've won 7 of their previous 8 games, including the last 2. This is kind of an interesting game tonight because it's really the strengths against strengths and weaknesses against weaknesses, right? Like the Titans defense isn't really great. Colts offense isn't really great. Titans offense is playing a lot better, and obviously we know what the Colts defense is.
The Colts proved to the NFL you can do everything right. Their GM's good, their coach is good, their defense is good, their O-line's good. They got good running backs. If you don't have the quarterback right, it's nonsense. The Colts do everything right. They can't get the quarterback. So that in the end, this is why people trade 7 picks and coaches for quarterbacks.
And why our patience for quarterbacks is shorter than it's ever been. Fox Bet has the Colts favored by 1.5 tonight. Derrick Henry is obviously the star of the game tonight, averaging 5.89 yards per rush in his career against the Colts, and the second best against a single opponent. But the Colts defense is allowing the 3rd fewest rush yards per game this season, so it's a head-to-head battle in those cases. So the NBA and especially the Eastern Conference is going to look a lot different this season with Kevin Durant returning this year. But former NBA champion Brian Scalabrine doesn't think the pairing of KD and Kyrie in Brooklyn is a lock to win a title.
Thank you.
I don't think their talent is good enough to win a championship. There's a reason why Kyrie was so spectacular that year. He was playing with LeBron James. And Kevin Durant is not LeBron. He's a very different player. He's not a kind of guy that's just going to get everybody better around him. I don't think it's a ticking time bomb. I just don't feel like they're better than a lot of these other teams. I don't think they're tougher than a lot of these other teams.
I totally agree. I think Golden State, everybody's sleeping on Golden State next year.
Everyone's forgetting about Golden State. But I also think this is a very interesting experiment in Brooklyn, right? Sure. People are completely forgotten about what Kevin Durant is capable of, and we're going to see it in a very different situation with Kyrie. Hopefully Kyrie is fully healthy for the season, and I think KD's going to come back as good as he was before. I know everyone's talking about this Achilles injury. Like, he's had plenty of time to rest and recover. He's going to be fine. But it is it's going to be a very dynamic situation. Brooklyn was not bad at the end of last season. We saw what they did in the bubble. They've been building a little bit of a culture there. I just think this is going to be one of those seasons where we're going to be like, oh, we forgot about the Golden State Warriors. We forgot about the Brooklyn Nets. And I think that there's a lot of teams that are going to emerge this season too. I think Philadelphia is going to be a lot better. Like the East is going to look a lot different, and I also think that the West isn't going to be as copy and paste as it was last year. I don't know what's going to happen with the Lakers. They haven't had a lot of time off since the bubble ended. LeBron James is not going to be coming back ready. Like a lot of the stars have already said like that have been in the bubble for a long time. We're going to be resting.
Yeah.
So the NBA season's just around the corner. It's going to look very different this year.
Yeah. Enjoy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie News.
By the way, I saw this story this morning that Kyler Murray is halfway to the NFL's first 4,000-yard passing, 1,000-yard rushing season. Just to put it in perspective, when Cam Newton came into the league, it was just considered crazy. Nobody did that. Yeah. So let's see this. Cam Newton rushed for 700 yards. Kyler's going to blow through it and get 1,000. Just think about that. How much Cam ran. and he's already at 2,100 passing yards. You know, I was saying this morning. There's a difference between a model and a supermodel. A model, you walk into a bar and see Pamela Anderson when she's 25. The hair, the curves, that's a model. But she's never been a supermodel. Kate Moss was a supermodel. You walk into a bar and not notice her. Because if you look at facial symmetry, if you went to the top modeling agencies in London, Paris, New York, the Ford Modeling Agency, Pamela Anderson's a model. You put her in a magazine. Kate Moss makes $10 million a year. Naomi Campbell makes $10 million a year. Unlike being on Vogue and all those magazine covers. One of them doesn't get as much attention. The model to the average person, without discernment, is, ooh, she is the best looking person I ever saw. But people who dissect that stuff, like Kate Moss is a top 10 supermodel ever. Cam's a model, Kyler's a supermodel. Meaning that Cam gets attention. The smile, the stature, the size. But when you start dissecting it, Kyler Murray does everything better than Cam. Everything. He's a better thrower of the football. He's a more consistent thrower. He's more accurate. He's faster. He's more elusive. Nobody hits him. In fact, the knock is, well, Cam was great in the red zone at the goal line. Carolina's actually gotten better since he left. Carolina this year is number 2 in the NFL in red zone with Teddy Bridgewater. Meanwhile, Arizona with Kyler in an average offensive line and their best running back hurt, top 6 in the league. So the one thing we look at Cam is absolutely better. Oh, first and goal, he's the best. I think over time Kyler will be better. But if they walked in together to a combine, you would just point to Cam. You'd be, oh my God, the smile, the look, the confidence, the arm. I watched Cam throw the other night. It looks painful. He's an arm thrower. He doesn't use his legs. He's been in the NFL 10 years. He still throws the ball. It's all arm. Kyler sets up. He's a baseball player. He throws it. It just looks beautiful. The ball pops. But that's the difference between model and supermodel. So the average guy, us, woo. But the people that do it for a living would be like, no, Kate Moss, Naomi Campbell. That's a supermodel. Like magazine covers, facial symmetry, perfect skin, blah, blah, blah. And I think if Cam and Kyler walked into the draft at the same time, everybody would draft Cam. Except the deep divers. They'd be like, no, Kyler does everything better than Cam. Everything. He's faster. I mean, literally 40-yard dash faster. He's more elusive. He never gets hit. Cam always got hit. I think he's better in the red zone. I think he's a better thrower. I think he's more accurate. He's got better form. He uses his legs more. By the way, he slides. Cam didn't slide. He get hit. I think I watched Kyler Murray in his second game, and I was like, oh, my God. I watched Cam for 10 years. I'm still not all in. I still don't get it. He drives me nuts. Second game with Kyler, I was like, oh my God, that's Russell Wilson on roids. Like, Russell didn't run around like that. Russell runs mostly to get time to throw. Kyler's like, I'm just going to run. Yesterday, Chris Spielman, one of the best linebackers, he was an All-American, goes to the NFL, still holds the Lions' all-time tackling record. He played only 8 years there. Said yesterday, Kyler reminds him of Barry Sanders. The second hardest guy he's ever seen to bring down. And I was like, yeah, that's what he is. You think Cam runs around? You could get everybody got a piece of Cam. Cam would run you over. Everybody got a shot at Cam. Sometimes too much. Kyler, you can't get a hit on him. Can't even touch him.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Browns-Texans is featured in this week's free-to-play Super 6 contest, where players have won over $1 million so far this year. All you have to do is correctly predict the outcome of 6 NFL games, so get your picks in before kickoff Sunday for your chance to be a millionaire. For top stories, scores, and more, go to the Fox Sports app. Colin, give us your winner and final score for Browns-Texans.
Browns win by a touchdown, 27-20. That's what I like. Chris Broussard's joining us live, Fox Sports NBA guy. We got all sorts of news in the NBA today. Russell Westbrook reportedly wants out of Houston. Chris Broussard now joining me live. All right, we're all going to beat up on Westbrook. Westbrook wants out. Westbrook, this is no good. Westbrook's hard to play with. Some of this is on James Harden, though, isn't it? He can't get along with anybody.
Some of it's on James Harden. I'm also going to throw out a mystery name at the end of my rant to put a little blame on as well. But yeah, James Harden, look, Dwight Howard, right? They brought in the big man to go with the perimeter star to win a championship in Houston. By the end of their tenure, both of them were trying to get each other traded. All right, Chris Paul. Harden was talking with Chris while Chris was with the Clippers, recruiting him. It's going to work out. We'll be great together. We'll win a championship. After 2 years,
they didn't want any part of each other. And now, childhood friend, I don't know, their relationship hopefully is still intact and they're still friends. But Westbrook wants the ball in his hands. Obviously, Harden keeps the ball in his hands. So now Russ wants out. So yes, some of it is on James Harden without question. Here's the mystery name though, Colin. Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni creates ball-dominant monsters. Now, I like Mike D'Antoni. I think he's a Hall of Fame coach, contrary to most of my media brethren. But everywhere he goes, he coaches, and one guy controls everything. Dominates the ball, creates all the offense. It was Steve Nash in Phoenix, which was fine because you had players around him that fit that style. And Nash was more of a passer than a scorer. You had Jeremy Lin for a brief moment in New York. But guess who wasn't happy during Linsanity? Carmelo Anthony, your star, because it was one guy dominating everything and it wasn't him. And now in Houston, James Harden used to be well-rounded. He used to be a versatile offensive player. He was young in OKC, I'll give you that. But he still showed he didn't have to be the man. He didn't have to dominate the ball. He could blend in with other stars. A few years in Mike D'Antoni's system, though, averaging 35, winning MVPs, becoming, to some people, the greatest scorer we've ever seen, putting up pre-merger numbers, and now he only wants to dominate the ball. And so some of this is on Mike D'Antoni creating a monster in James Harden.
Westbrook's legacy doesn't work anywhere, does he? What's his legacy?
Westbrook is in that unique space where he doesn't really have to win a title. Now, granted, if he led a team to a championship or even was the second guy, it would certainly boost his legacy and take him to another level. But we have kind of decided on Westbrook, he's not going to win a championship. That style of play, it doesn't happen. Just like, Colin, we decided on Allen Iverson about 2/3 of the way through his career. Man, this dude is awesome. He's an all-time great. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. We haven't seen too many like him, but we all knew he ain't winning a championship. There's no way, and that's where Westbrook is. Like Iverson, Westbrook will be iconic because those triple-double seasons, Colin, unless they become commonplace, unless Luka starts doing it every other year, LeBron does it next season, barring that, we will look back at Russell Westbrook as an icon. When we think of Oscar Robertson, we don't think of the championship he won in 1971 with Lou Alcindor, even though Oscar was great that year. And in those finals, he averaged 23 and almost 10 assists in those finals. They swept Baltimore, Earl to Pearl Monroe. But we don't even think about that. We think he averaged a triple-double for a whole season. That's what we'll think about with Russell Westbrook 20, 30 years from now. We say, man, it was this kid. He didn't win it, but he averaged a triple-double for 3 years, and he was only 6 feet, 2 or 3 inches tall. That's his legacy, and that's what we remember, man.
3 minutes left. I've always been a huge fan of Chris Paul. Everybody always said he's hard to play with, but that's funny. We never talk about Blake Griffin anymore. Why? Because Chris Paul doesn't play with him. We don't talk about DeAndre Jordan. Oklahoma City was great with him last year, and a bunch of guys you've never heard of. Chris Paul wants out. I'm going to throw one at you, and it sounds crazy. He loves L.A. Unlike Kawhi, he's a verbal leader. He was the face of the franchise. He elevates others. Chris Paul to the Clippers makes a ton of sense to me. Your thoughts?
I love it. I just don't know how it happens. Now, are you saying Chris Paul to the Clippers and they keep Kawhi, obviously,
yes,
but also Paul George?
No, I'm saying you got to move Paul George.
Yeah, see, that's where, really?
Yes.
See, look, Chris Paul is a better player than Paul George.
Yes.
Even as Chris has had his struggles in the playoffs at times, I still trust him far more in the playoffs than Paul George. Here's the problem with that, Colin. Chris he's 35, and even though he played a full season last year, the 3 previous years when he had a chance to win a championship, he missed more than 20 games each of the 3 seasons. And remember, he missed the two most important games of the season in the playoffs against Golden State when Houston really had a chance to win it. So I would hesitate to give up a star in his prime or who's coming toward his prime, like a Paul George is in his prime, for Chris when I know I can't count on Chris physically. Now, if I can get Chris and keep Paul George and Kawhi, I'm all in. I think they're right there with the Lakers, if not above the Lakers. But without Paul George, as much as I like CP3, I don't think I can do it.
By the way, 30 seconds left. LaMelo Ball, I heard yesterday, is going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. I think he's great on YouTube. I think he's fun. The word is he not really doesn't want to play defense. What do you make of that story that he's the number 1 pick?
Right. Yeah, well, one person I spoke to yesterday told me if he goes to Minnesota with D'Angelo Russell, it will be quote-unquote a mess. Melo has talent, but he's viewed as a kid that's kind of silly, kind of immature, may put up numbers, but at this point at least not going to play winning basketball. I was told if he goes to Golden State, where he won't play that much, but can learn in a professional atmosphere, he could eventually become a really good player. That'd be good for him. But if he goes to Minnesota, maybe Detroit, there's talk about that, where he can kind of do what he wants and he'll be the star, then it's going to be trouble.
Chris Broussard, Odd Couple with Rob Parker every day. Good seeing you, bud.
All right, my man. You too.
Weather can be unpredictable. Get your wipers right. Michelin Endurance XT silicone wiper blades. Walmart's where you get them. Last 2 times longer than other blades. Plus RecTech. How about that grill? A grill built by grillers for grillers. RecTeq.com. You can start it and cook your protein, your meat by your phone. RecTech. RecTeq.com. Hour 3 next.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
Hey guys, it is Bobby Bones. This is Vets You Should Know, a brand new podcast from iHeartRadio. Throughout this 4-part series, I'm going to introduce you to 4 military veterans with inspiring stories who continue to use their experiences and the lessons they learned in service through their journey as civilians. You won't want to miss hearing from these heroic men and women who have fought overseas and continue to serve their families and communities in new ways. Listen to Vets You Should Know on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
Thanks for listening to the Herd Podcast. Be sure to catch us live every weekday from 12 to 3 Eastern, 9 to noon Pacific on Fox Sports Radio and FS1. Find your local station for the Herd at foxsportsradio.com or stream us live every day on the iHeartRadio app by searching Herd.
You're listening to Fox Sports Radio.
Carshield.com. Don't freak out when the check engine light goes on. Get 10% off if you go to carshield.com, code HERD today. Deductible may apply. Good to have you. Chris Cooley played for almost a decade in the NFL. He's the all-time leader. Catches for the Washington football team. And they've had a lot of good ones. A lot of good ones. And was a Pro Bowler, multiple-time Pro Bowler. Did some radio TV. He is now retired with his family in one of the most beautiful and undiscussed states in America, Wyoming, and he is joining us now live. So it's interesting. I want to talk to you. I want to start with NFC East quarterbacks because they're often discussed. So I'll give you the quarterback, and you tell me, Chris, future, you'd pay him, you like him. Let's start with Daniel Jones. What do you see as a guy that played in this league for a decade with Daniel Jones today? You're the coach, you're the GM. What is he?
I think he's Eli Manning with a little bit more athletic ability.
there's some things that I really like about Daniel Jones. One, there's some toughness. The guy will take shots in the pocket, he'll make competitive throws, and he'll fight. He can move, he can make throws on the run. But he's a guy that isn't devoid of weapons. They've had some injuries throughout this year, but he's also a guy that I haven't seen that true spark from. And it's funny, you say that, but then you go, oh, look at Justin Herbert, and look at all these young quarterbacks. Look at Kyler Murray. Daniel Jones is just not a spark quarterback for me, so oddly enough, in New York, he's Eli Manning.
Yeah. Dak, what do you do with him? What do you see?
I'd pay Dak. Dak's a guy that I've seen develop over the last 5 seasons. I think he's a true leader. I think he's beloved by everybody in that organization, including all of the fans. And I think he's really become a very good quarterback. You look at Dak, who was really basic with Jason Garrett in his first few years, ended up evolving. They get weapons around him. In his first year in McCarthy's offense, which this team has been bad, that team has been bad, but Dak excelled. Made big play after big play, brought him back from some huge deficits. He's a guy that I think you have to have loyalty to. And when you pay a guy like that, it starts to set a standard. Now, the one thing, Colin, that gets tough is, can you surround your quarterback with the type of weapons when you start talking about a cap number that's like 14, 15, 16% of your cap, which is what they're going to have to pay him. I've heard all the talk that if he had a huge season in this franchise year, he would have dictated a ton of money. He did. 5 games was enough, I think, for people to see. Anyone will pay that.
All right, let's go to Carson Wentz. I like him, injury prone. What do you think of him?
I think Carson Wentz is one of those interesting guys that maybe isn't a good fit for Philadelphia. To me, it seems like there's been issues with Wentz since he went down and Foles came in. Going back to that next year where they had the giant billboard of Nick Foles, and you could tell it hurt Carson Wentz's feelings.
Yeah.
He's a guy that's an incredible playmaker. And Wentz is a guy that can do anything you want him to do. He'll extend plays. He's great off script. He can make every throw on the football field. But at the same time, he's a guy that makes a ton of mistakes. And like you mentioned, he's a guy that ends up injured all the time. So I think that you really have a question mark on what you want to do with Carson Wentz in the future. Someone will pay him because he's an outstanding talent, but I don't know if the fit's perfect in Philadelphia.
I've never heard anybody say that. That is interesting. And by the way, with his injuries, Howie Roseman would probably at this point take phone calls. If somebody was interested, Howie would probably take a phone call. Okay, now let's go to Washington. You're going to have a top 6 pick. They're going to take a quarterback, right?
You'd think that they're going to take a quarterback. I don't think that Dwayne Haskins is the future there. It's hard when you have 2 staffs, and you can say whatever you wanted to say about the previous staff with Gruden and the Allen administration, but when you bring in a new staff in Rivera, who's really respected around the league, and Dwayne makes it 5 games, and now there's rumblings that it's not good in the week of practice, and that he's not where they need to be, and it's a huge project. I think that's hard for a team with a young offensive coordinator in Scott Turner in his first year, trying to establish identity, trying to install in meetings and say, this is what we want to be, but then you have Dwayne that maybe isn't executing throughout the week in that fashion. It was a big gamble, I thought, taking Haskins when they took him a year ago. A lot of people liked him, but a lot of people weren't quite sure based on 1 year at Ohio State with tremendous weapons and so many yards after the catch. My guess would be that they would move on from Dwayne. For them, I'm sure they're hoping to have some trade value in him. I'm sure they shopped him around the trade deadline and didn't get what they wanted. Maybe they will in this offseason, but there's also 4 or 5 young guys coming up. So Dwayne will be interesting how they handle that situation.
Chris Cooley.
I would guess you draft a guy, Colin.
Yeah, no.
But then you're looking at, is Alex Smith going to sit here again and be Patrick Mahomes number 2? For 1 more year in Washington, which I love for a young quarterback at times, to let him learn behind a guy like Alex. Alex is as good of a guy as it gets, as good of a teammate as it gets. He's a tremendous leader. He's a student of the game. He knows how to prepare and do everything the right way. I don't know if Alex is a top 20 quarterback at this point in his career, but he's a guy that you can plug and play if he's healthy.
Yeah. Now I'm going to throw a couple quarterbacks at you. A fascinating one. Being around Washington. So Lamar Jackson is 25-2 in his career when he doesn't face Patrick Mahomes. I just watched him against the Colts defense, and he ate it up in the second half, and that's a really good defense. And I know Mayfield can hurt Cleveland. Phillip Rivers can hurt the Colts. I watch Lamar, and I'm like, he's imperfect. But God, he started 30 games, he's won 25. I watched him in the second half against the Colts. They couldn't stop him. Like, have we gotten to a point where, okay, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's healthy, he's dynamic, he wins a ton, he's hard to defend. I keep hearing everybody moving off. I think he's twice the quarterback of Kaepernick. What do you make of Lamar?
So I think when Lamar came out and there was questions about what he was going to be, I said I'd take him number 1 overall if he'd do whatever I wanted. I said he'd be the best running back in the NFL, and he probably would have coming out of that draft, or the best running back in that draft. He's not Patrick Mahomes. And I think Baltimore, to some extent at this point in his career, has to be a front-runner type of team where they get out to leads early in games.
Yeah.
But when they're in balance with that offense, what Greg Roman does with that offense is absolutely outstanding. The way they run the football, the way they balance the run-action pass and some of the pass game stuff with it is tremendous. Lamar makes plays in third-down situations throughout the year where he can make some big throws. He can also essentially be the check down and be the scrambling quarterback that's going to get you those yards. I would love to have Lamar Jackson be my quarterback. You're just going to develop an offense that isn't Kansas City's offense. And that's essentially what Greg Roman did.
Yeah, no, you fall where I do. All I know is he's got a superpower. If you got a superpower as a quarterback, Josh Allen's arm, Kyler Murray's scramble, if you have a superpower and you don't get hurt, I'll figure it out. It's up to me as a coach to figure out how to use you. Now let's go to a guy that I used to like but I'm out on because he's hurt too much and doesn't have a superpower, Jimmy Garoppolo. Where do you land with him? What do you think the Niners do?
I think the Niners are going to move on from Garoppolo at the end of the year. They're going to have a huge cap savings at the end of the year, something like $20 million if they move on from Garoppolo. Now, I spent a lot of time around the Shanahans and Kyle. I think he's an outstanding coach. I think he coaches quarterbacks as well as anybody. And I've actually heard they love Garoppolo as a dude. They're not sure about what Garoppolo is as a player. And when I watch Jimmy, Colin, I see a guy that I think is a slow post-snap diagnosed quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily see defense really well once the ball's in his hands. I think he's got a lightning quick release, and there's a lot of instances where it looks like throws are on time and he's clicking on all cylinders, but I think some of it's just the ball's out of his hand so quick, even though he's late with his decision-making process. To me, Jimmy's another one of those guys that's also hurt all the time. And so now you're sitting here saying, do we go to C.J. Beathard or do we go to Nick Mullins or what direction do we go in the situation? I think Kyle wants a guy that he can truly stand behind as a quarterback. I'll be interested where they do go. You know, I don't know if he wants a rookie quarterback in San Francisco. Do they go out and try to trade for Cousins? That's almost impossible because Kirk Cousins has so much dead money at the end of the year. A year later, they possibly could. You know, I looked around. There's a few guys out there that you could possibly sign, but there's no sure thing for San Francisco. Maybe they do draft, but I'll bet you they don't have Jimmy Garoppolo.
Are you surprised that Burrow and Herbert and Tua with no preseason are this effective? I'm kind of shocked by Herbert. I'm shocked by it. Are you?
I would say I'm a little bit shocked by Herbert. I think the prototypical quarterback stuff has been there. Everybody saw that. He's a big, tall guy that can move incredibly well, that makes a ton of throws, that did a heck of a job at Oregon. I think some of the question marks were, can he really dictate and demand the huddle? Can he really manage the line of scrimmage in the NFL? And, man, he's been so much fun to watch. I'm not surprised at all with Burrow. I mean, what they did at LSU and what was an NFL-style offense, I think, was awesome. What he showed last year was outstanding. I think he's every bit the ideal quarterback from what he is in the media and what he says to his teammates to how he delivers on the field. He's a guy that they're going to love having in Cincinnati. And then, two, he was fun to watch a week ago.
Yeah.
You know, that was interesting. It kind of came out in Miami that they have to find out what they have in their quarterback, and then it was walked back a little bit, but I don't disagree with that. You know, Fitzpatrick's not going to be the guy forever. They're a good football team right now. There's some more to find out on what Tua is going to be in Miami. One really slow game and one pretty outstanding game last week.
Yeah.
They also have a defense that scores about every game.
Yeah.
So they don't get as many possessions.
You know, it's funny. Joy and I talk about this. Jason Taylor was her brother, obviously the Hall of Fame. We talk about this all the time, is that well-coached teams, they don't always win, but they get better. Like, think the Giants right now with Joe Judge, they're getting better every week. And I'm like, okay, that's well, they don't have to win games because they don't have a lot of weapons offensively. And I can watch a team like Miami last year at the end of the year, Chris. I was like, they're not great, but they won 5 of their last 9 games, and I watched them. I actually think Joe Judge and Brian Flores, and I know it's early, right? I almost feel like, okay, this works. Like when you watch, can you tell quickly, okay, players buy in, players don't? Am I jumping the gun on Joe Judge and Brian Flores, or do you think it works?
I think you develop a culture and a standard for what you want your team to be, and then you start to get the type of guys that are going to buy into that team. You know, there are guys, Logan Ryan a week ago, Joe Judge said, go take care of your wife, and Logan Ryan is so complimentary, and then a week later, he tells Golden Tate, get the hell out because you're begging for balls, so you're not even going to come to the game.
Right.
I like that he's sure in himself. I like that he's sure of his belief of the direction he wants to take that team. And I'm with you. I don't think New York is a terrible football team. They've lost a lot of close ball games this year. By no means are they a playoff contender, other than it's the NFC East.
Right.
But they're not going to win games in the playoffs. That said, Judge is building something there, and I think he's a very good coach.
Yeah, no, I do too. All right, Chris. Chris in beautiful Wyoming. I hope you're a skier. Are your kids skiers? Your wife, are you a skier?
I was a skier. I had that don't want to get injured to pay back your guaranteed money clause. You know you got to pay all that guaranteed money back, like pre-tax, if you get hurt skiing. So I didn't want to do that.
Well, you played
It's been a while.
You played football at Utah State, so I know you skied in high school, right?
I skied in high school. I skied in college a lot as well.
Yeah.
Utah, good skiing.
Yeah, a lot of good skiing. Good
Oh,
seeing
yeah.
Good talking to you again, bud. Good seeing you.
Good talking to you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Chris Cooley moved his family to Wyoming, which is I keep trying to talk my wife into that. She's never been there. I'm like, it's amazing. It's a state
I've
that
heard
you don't.
it's beautiful. I've always wanted to go to Wyoming.
Well, it's surrounded by Utah, which is easier for people in California to get to, so they just go there. But you can drive a car from where I have a place in Park City to Wyoming. You know, it takes you an hour.
Have you ever driven across the country?
I once drove across Connecticut. No, I've never done that before.
Me either. I don't think it's on my list.
Well, I used to go to college in Eastern Washington University. So I grew up in the West. I grew up on the beach on the West Coast, the dreary, rainy beach, which I love. Very idyllic childhood, you know. Motorbikes on the beach, high school basketball, football. Loved it. Loved my childhood. And then I went on the exact opposite side of the state, the Palouse, which is hot and wheat fields. And I love that. So I kind of like that high desert. So I would drive every year. Now, that sounds like nothing, but Washington's a big state. That was a 5.5-hour drive. And in the winter, it snowed. And I was treacherous. You know, I'd be there with putting on chains and stuff. So that's the big drives in my. And I did drive one time. I told you about my big scary drive. I drove out of college from Anacortes, Washington. That was my girlfriend. To Las Vegas. So I had
So how many hours was that?
It was 3 days. So I went from Anacortes, Washington, down to Medford, Oregon was 1 day. And it was 2-day drive. And then I went from to Bakersfield, Kern County, stopped there, and then Bakersfield to Vegas. I was accosted in Kern County and Bakersfield by the laundry room. I had $800 to my name in a green and gray baseball jacket. And I kept the money right here, that means nothing to the radio audience, in my kind of stomach. $800 to my name. No cell phones back then. $800 to my name. 2 guys in bandanas came up, tough guys, facial hair guys. And they came up to me and they said, "Got any money?" and cornered me. And I went in my pocket and I had like $10 and I gave it to them. I said, "That's all I got." And I got quarters and they walked away. If I give them that, I don't know what I do. I don't even know what I do.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess you're lucky they didn't decide you had more.
That's the kind of hard scrabble life I have lived.
Well, you have facial hair now, so what does
Now,
that say about
I'm
you?
one of those guys. I can accost people in a laundry room in Fresno, California, or wherever it was, Bakerfield.
I've driven from Pittsburgh to Miami several times. That's a long drive.
That's about.
It's 24 hours if you don't stop.
Oh, you stop though, right?
No.
You don't stop.
Mm-mm.
Why don't you stop in West Virginia and have a hamburger?
Well,
or something?
I'm definitely not stopping in West Virginia. West Virginia on that drive is the place you drive the speed limit the entire way.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.
All right, Joy Taylor with the news.
Turn on the news. This is the Herdline News.
The Masters began this morning.
It did. It was raining. It was raining a lot.
Tiger Woods is looking to defend his 2019 championship. He had an unforgettable victory at Augusta last year, and he says he still gets emotional thinking about it.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, I'm still getting chills just thinking about it. When I walked off the back of the green, you know, to see Charlie there and just open up our arms, and it meant a lot to me, and it still does. And just reminded me so much of me and my dad. And to come full circle like that, it still gives me, you know, a little teary.
That's my second favorite. Two moments in Tiger's career. The U.S. Open at Pebble Beach when he beat Rocco Mediate, and he was just hitting bombs. Remember that? They went to a playoff or something. Oh, it was the U.S. Open. My bad. And it was the craziest thing. And then that. I was emotional watching that.
I don't know who didn't cry watching that.
It was my second favorite. The U.S. Open for Tiger was. It was like the Phoenix Open, but the U.S. The crowd was going crazy. You couldn't even. You were just screaming at the television.
Well, he said he definitely thought the fans helped him last year, so it's going to be a stark contrast without them this year. He's currently 4 under through 13. The leader is Paul Casey, who is 7 under. But yeah, it's going to be different without the fans. Like that's
you know what's funny?
A big experience.
What's really cool about Tiger? We root for him differently. He was the favorite, and he used to turn some people off because he would swear and throw clubs. Now. Everybody's in on Tiger. The whole gallery's on.
Yeah, it's an American thing. We have to, we build our stars up, and then we got to tear them all down, and then we got to build them back up again. I don't know why we can't just let people be great, but don't get me started on the Tiger Woods story. I thought it was the most hypocritical, ridiculous reaction to anything that's ever happened with a star in the history of superstars. We don't have enough time for it.
I know, but I spent months defending him.
I'm glad that Tiger is back. So Mike Evans is one of the best receivers in the league, but he and Tom Brady aren't connecting as much as they would have thought. Evans has only been targeted 52 times through 9 games, which is on pace for the fewest targets of any season in his career.
So let's add AB.
So Bucs receiver coach Kevin Garner says he isn't concerned, saying there's only one football and Brady does a great job distributing it. Of the Bucs pass catchers with at least 150 routes this season, Evans has the lowest target rate at 16%, according to Next Gen
And that's with
Stats.
O.J. Howard out and Chris Godwin hurt. So
Very strange.
So they lost their best tight end. Their number 2 receiver's hurt, and it's the fewest targets. How about we develop a relationship with him and not worry about AB? Last week, first 3 series, they're forcing the ball to AB. Like, stop it.
I mean, those numbers to tell you, like, this is obviously a big difference.
Mike Evans is the second best wide receiver he's ever had behind Randy Moss. Get him the ball. 12 targets, 8 catches, minimum every Sunday.
It's very obvious that it's not happening. Last week, Daniel Jones didn't have a turnover for only the second time in his career, and the Giants got the win. But with only 3 second-half points, he was criticized for not being aggressive enough, and head coach Joe Judge strongly disagrees with that assessment and defended his quarterback's play.
I see a lot of aggressiveness in Daniel, and I like the way he plays, and the team rallies around him right there. When it comes time to take our shots, we'll take our shots offensively, and sometimes we have to be a little more calculated about how we want to systematically move the ball down the field. You have to have a good balance of both within the game plan. That being said, look, I think Daniel's a developing player. I think he's showing a lot of promise. He's making a lot of gains this year.
You know what I like about the Giants? As impatient as we are about the quarterback position now, they're not being impatient with Daniel Jones.
No, he makes some mistakes. We'll
just let him keep developing.
The fascinating team.
They really are.
I'm going to take the Giants to upset the Eagles this week. Hey, Goulet, put that in my blazing 5 picks. It's my 13th pick I've given John. Giants
You've
over.
been giving picks all day.
Well, I always give him a lot of picks on Tuesday and Wednesday. I give John picks, and then I
narrow it down.
Then I narrow it down all week until Friday morning. I've got
No, hold on. You skipped the step. You give me picks, then you add all the other games, and then on Friday morning you narrow it back down.
Okay, give me the Giants over the Eagles 28-24 outright.
Don't forget the games you also had, but then you switch which team you're picking.
Yeah,
so our researchers go crazy because they have to find stuff on both sides.
I love Seattle Monday. I like the Rams today. listen, this is what it's called research. I'm like a
Yeah,
scientist.
it's a process.
When you get new photosynthesis information in, you got to change your pick.
That's it.
Are we done?
Yes.
Joy with the news.
Well, that's the news.
And thanks for stopping by.
The Herd Lie
You
News.
fans always complain about me. Can I complain about you? When I get new information, I change my mind. Always.
You're allowed to do that.
New fun fact. You already had that pick in.
I like the Giants over the Eagles.
So,
What's my score that I gave you yesterday?
23-21.
Yeah, that's good. Stick with that. I like both defensive lines. So yeah, fans are always complaining about me, and I'm over it. I'm complaining about you. I changed my mind. You need to deal with it. This switch up here is just full of information. It's processing. It's like a blender of genius. It's going a million miles an hour up here. Sometimes it just comes up with a new protein shake.
Be sure to catch live editions of The Herd weekdays at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific on Fox Sports Radio, FS1, and the iHeartRadio app.
Good to have you back in today. It's an interesting week in the NFL. It's so funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine who bets for a living. That's what he does. He bets big sums of money. And he said, it's just one of those weeks where nobody is as good as they were last week. He goes, Tampa Bay, mark my words, will play really well. The Saints won't play well. And the Buffalo Bills will not look like that. And the Seattle Seahawks will not look like that. So it's going to be one of those weeks where in the NFL, it's not college, where Alabama gives you the same performance almost every week. In the NFL, rarely do you give, if especially a good team plays great, they never do the next week. I mean, the Pittsburgh Steelers went through these emotional games, then almost lost to Dallas. Like, one of the more consistent teams actually in the league is Miami. I know what I get. I've watched Miami every week this year. And then watch them a lot. Like, maybe not every snap, but on them, one of my TVs. Miami, because they're led by defense, gives you the same performance every week. If you're led by offense, sometimes you have, like Brady. They're led by offense, right? You think, well, they get an offensive lineman hurt. They can't protect. Brady's awful. But watch this week. I got upsets. I got the Giants, the underdog, is going to beat Philadelphia. Watch San Francisco give the Saints a handful. Watch the 49ers give the Saints trouble. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. I don't know about that. Pittsburgh was so bad last week, they'll probably bounce back because they got, Mike Tomlin.
Well, Ben's on the COVID list, though, too, this week.
Has Pittsburgh got a...
He has to test negative, I believe, every test for the rest of the
Tomlin
week. But
does?
he's not going to be around. Big Ben.
Oh, did he get...
No, it was a proximity thing, but, he's not allowed in the building.
I
would be more concerned if it wasn't the Bengals that they were going up against this weekend, but it is something to pay attention to.
I had a friend, my buddy Eric. I finally have a friend who got COVID. Not like I was rooting for it. I mean, it's just I finally had a friend. I'm like, oh, I got a friend that has it. He's in the best shape of any friend I have. Had to go to the hospital. Knocked him out. His wife is sick. He was off his feet. And he is a 45-year-old guy with an 8-pack. He's a volleyball player. Like, I've never seen anybody in his kind of shape. A lot of it's just genetics, but he works out, surfer, on his butt in a hospital. Knocked him out.
It's very real.
Yeah, it's not a... Bleach is not effective. It's not a hoax. What's happened in America is we're all getting very casual. Not all of us, but a lot of people are getting casual because, there's a fatigue to anything. Like, people are exhausted. I hate wearing my mask. I wear it all day. I hate it. There's nothing I like about it. It's nothing I like. Even when I go running, I put it around my chin in case I see an old couple. Like, I hate it, but it's the winter and the flu season with COVID. It's just, we got to get through this thing. The vaccine is going to be available, they say, in the spring. For people in the medical profession and older people, it'll be available in December, January. We're almost there. We're getting close. But it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't love wearing a mask either, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Until we get a vaccine.
Yeah.
And then probably afterwards as well until they tell us we don't have
Yesterday, I was wearing it in the car. And I thought to myself, oh, God.
Sometimes I just forget. I get in the car and I start doing stuff.
That's what I can tell that it's becoming part of my life. I was in the car yesterday on a 50-minute drive, and I was like, what are you wearing your mask for? And I'm like, oh, it's become my...
When I watch shows where they don't have it on, I think it's weird now. I'm like, oh, I can't take this seriously. They're not wearing masks.
That's right.
It's become so normal.
Well, I mean, it's almost like in the movies and in TV shows. If you don't have people staring at their phones, that's not real life. You cannot have a restaurant scene in a restaurant. Everybody's looking at their phone. Otherwise, you're trying to do a 1980 sensibility with a 2020. If you do a restaurant scene in any movie, everybody's looking at their phone, or I don't believe your movie.
Everyone's talking and
Nobody
having
talks.
conversations.
That doesn't happen.
I try to put my phone away when I go to a restaurant.
I do with my wife. That's the rule.
Oh, that's right. That's why you can't watch games on your phone.
Nope. Eye contact. Say nice stuff. Maybe at the end of the night, gives me a hug. I mean, that's the game. You gotta play.
I understand.
Yeah, marriage. Still a game. It's all a big game. Big amusement park. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for listening. And live in Los Angeles, it's The Herd.
I'm Shonda Rhimes. If you've watched Grey's Anatomy or any of my TV shows, then you know I love to tell a good story. Well, now there's Shondaland Audio. We've partnered with iHeartRadio to launch a slate of great podcasts. You can listen to the first 4 right now. Katie's Crib, Criminalia, Go Ask Allie, and You Down. And we have so much more coming your way. We can't wait for you to hear it all. Welcome to Shondaland Audio. Listen to all the new Shondaland Audio shows on Apple Podcasts.